The night Juliana Bell was forced into the extra shift, the sky over Manhattan hung low and humid, the kind of heat that pressed against the skin and made the whole city feel restless. She stood outside the Indigo Hotel with a paper cup of cheap coffee, trying to breathe through the exhaustion twisting in her chest. She hadn't slept properly in 3 days. Her boss at the media firm had threatened to cut her hours if she didn't be a team player. A team player apparently meant covering a last-minute late-night interview at a place she could never afford to stay. Juliana pushed through the revolving doors, adjusting the strap of the camera bag digging into her shoulder. Inside the lobby, glowed with soft amber lights marble floors, reflecting the chandelier above, like 1,000 fractured stars. She took a moment to collect herself. She always did. The world had never given her soft places to land, only moments to stand taller. She had learned to take those moments, breathe through them, and keep moving. As she made her way toward the elevators, she noticed the subtle shimmer of rain beginning to mist across the tall windows. Perfect, she thought. Another night that felt heavier than it should. Her phone buzzed a message from Kelly. "Good luck tonight, babe. Bring something home for me if they have freebies." Typical Kelly. Playful, demanding, entitled without even realizing it. Juliana sighed. She didn't have the energy to explain she was working, not attending a gala. Still, Kelly had been her only friend growing up, even if the relationship had always felt slightly uneven, as though Kelly took more space than she ever returned. Juliana stepped into the elevator. As the doors began to close, a hand shot through the gap, halting it. A man stumbled in, colliding against the mirrored wall with a groan. Juliana froze. He was tall, striking with a face sharp, like something carved from marble. But it wasn't his beauty that made her heart seize, it was the blood on his shirt blooming through the fabric near his ribs. His breath rasped, as though each inhale cost more than he had to give. "Sir," she whispered instinctively, bringing her hands up. "Are you okay? Do you need—" The man's eyes flicked to hers, icy blue and disoriented, filled with something like fear and something like determination. He tried to lift his hand, but failed. The elevator lurched upward, and the man's body buckled. "Hey, hey!" She caught him before he collapsed fully, his weight knocking her backward. He slumped against her shoulder, breath, shallow skin burning with fever or adrenaline, she couldn't tell which. "Help," he managed, barely audible. Someone's following me." Juliana blinked, pulse pounding. For a moment, she wondered if she was imagining the shadow that had flashed across the lobby behind them. But the fear in his voice was real. The desperation. The elevator dinged at the 14th floor. Thinking fast, Juliana dragged him out, half pulling, half supporting him down the quiet hallway, lined with navy carpet and gold-trimmed sconces. She didn't know who he was, didn't know why he was hurt, but she knew enough about fear to recognize when someone needed help right now, not later. A housekeeping cart sat abandoned near the service room. She spotted a door ajar. Room 1406. Empty. Uncleaned. Perfect. Juliana nudged it open with her foot, maneuvering the man inside. The door clicked shut behind them, and silence swallowed the room. Only his ragged breathing broke it. Juliana eased him onto the bed and quickly grabbed towels, pressing them against the wound. Her hands trembled, not out of panic, but out of something bone deep, a reminder of every time she'd patched up her father when he was sick, or cleaned cuts on her own arms from childhood accidents Kelly had laughed at instead of helping. "Stay with me," she whispered, brushing his hair back. "You're safe now." He forced his eyes open, staring at her as if trying to memorize her face, but darkness dragged him under again. Juliana worked silently, quickly, instinctively. She cleaned what she could, stabilized his breathing, elevated his head. She wasn't a doctor, but she'd learned enough from life to keep someone alive until help arrived. Only she couldn't call for help. Not yet. Not when he'd begged her in the elevator. Someone's following me. Her phone buzzed again. Kelly, you. Good. Don't forget my souvenir. Juliana swallowed a humorless laugh. If Kelly saw her now kneeling beside an unconscious stranger, she would have called her insane. But something about the man pulled at her. Not attraction, though that was undeniable, but something deeper. Something that felt like destiny had crashed into her shift tonight and asked her to witness it. Hours passed. She dozed in the armchair, head tilted back, but her senses stayed alert. The man slept, though his sleep was restless, as if haunted. Just before dawn, he stirred. She rose quickly, worried he might panic. But he didn't wake. Not fully. Instead, he murmured something she couldn't make out, reaching blindly toward the space beside him. Toward her. Juliana exhaled shakily and stepped away. She grabbed her bag, scribbled a note. You're safe. You were hurt. I helped. Don't worry. And slipped out quietly, locking the door behind her. She didn't need thanks. She just needed to get on with her life. But fate had other plans. Barely a minute after Juliana exited through the service stairwell, Kelly stepped out of the lobby elevator, yawning hair in a messy bun. She'd come to meet Juliana for breakfast, hoping to brag about some new flirty encounter from last night. But when she saw a housekeeping cart knocked over near the 14th floor hallway, curiosity pulled her closer. Curiosity and that innate entitlement that made her believe interesting things were made to fall into her lap. She found the door to 1406 slightly ajar. One gentle push. Kelly gasped. A man, a devastatingly handsome man, lay unconscious on the bedchest, half exposed, bandaged clumsily but effectively. She didn't hesitate. She strode inside, smoothing her hair, fluffing her shirt, transforming instantly from sleepy girl to damsel ready to be adored. She knelt beside him lightly, touching his arm. Right then, Austin Landon woke. Half conscious, disoriented, his memory fogged from pain and adrenaline. He saw a silhouette leaning over him. A woman's outline. The shape of someone who had patched his wounds, stayed by his side, kept him alive. You, he whispered. You saved me. Kelly froze, but only for a second. Then her lips curled into a slow, opportunistic smile. Yes, she breathed. I saved you. And Austin, drifting in and out, believed her. It was the easiest lie Kelly had ever told, and the most lucrative. Downstairs, Juliana emerged into the crisp morning air, unaware of the identity of the man she had saved, unaware of the lie that had already begun to poison her future. She walked toward the subway, feeling strangely hollow, as though she had left something important behind. A memory, a possibility, a doorway into a life she never imagined she'd touch. But life wasn't done with her, not even close. That evening, exhausted and raw, Juliana stopped by a bar near her apartment. She wanted one moment, just one, where she didn't have to be strong. Bennett slid into the seat next to her, handsome, in a boyish, reckless way, the kind of danger Juliana normally knew how to avoid. He spoke softly, kindly, listened when she didn't mean to open up, offered comfort she hadn't asked for. And for the first time in months, she let herself lean into someone else's warmth. It was careless, human, desperate. They stumbled into his apartment less than an hour later, and for the briefest moment, she let the world fall away. But morning light is merciless. Juliana woke before he did, heart sinking with clarity. This wasn't who she was, and this wasn't what she wanted. She dressed quietly, slipped out the door, and closed it behind her with trembling hands. She had no idea that two worlds, two men, were about to collide around her like storm fronts drawn to her gravity, nor that the night she thought she could forget would become the center of everything. Fate had already chosen its moment, and Juliana's life was no longer her own. The week after the Indigo night was a blur for Juliana, a blur of deadlines, exhaustion, and the persistent sense that something in her life had shifted, though she couldn't name what or why. She returned to her routine at the media company, telling herself that whatever had happened at the hotel, both the man she saved and the mistake with Bennett, belonged to a night she would bury forever. She tried to work harder, keep her head down, avoid everything that felt dangerous. But fate was moving again, long before she realized it. The announcement came during an emergency staff meeting on Tuesday morning. Landon Enterprises has officially acquired our company. Effective immediately, your new chief executive officer is Mr. Austin Landon. The room erupted with whispers. Landon, the billionaire tech magnate philanthropist, the kind of name she had only ever heard on news reports and magazine covers. Juliana's stomach sank with an inexplicable sense of dread. She didn't know why. She didn't remember any name the man in the hotel had spoken. She didn't even know who he was. She only remembered blue eyes and a voice that trembled between strength and fear. She told herself it couldn't be him. The universe wasn't small enough for that. But when the glass doors opened and Austin Landon stepped inside, tall, composed, unmistakable, Juliana felt the air vanish from her lungs. It was him. The same man who had bled onto the carpet, whose weight had collapsed into her arms, whose eyes had opened once, just briefly, searching for safety in the dark. Only now, he stood confident, uninjured, dressed in a tailored suit that seemed to claim the entire room with its presence. Austin scanned the staff with a polite nod, but his gaze caught on her like a hook. Juliana straightened involuntarily, as if her body was reacting faster than her mind could. Their eyes met. Just a second. But something in his expression shifted confusion, recognition, a spark of memory trying to surface. At that exact moment, Kelly glided into the room, high heels tapping a smug rhythm against the floor. She made a beeline for Austin, looping her arm casually through his with a possessive ease that made Juliana blink. "There you are," Kelly said sweetly. "I didn't know you'd already started the meeting." Austin's brow furrowed for a brief second, but he offered her a polite smile and allowed her closeness. To him, she was the woman he believed had saved him, and Kelly played the role with flawless grace, leaning in a little too close, speaking softly, as if they shared intimate secrets. Juliana swallowed hard and looked away. Of course, that explained everything. The handsome, frightened man from the elevator probably had a girlfriend, and a beautiful one. Confident, charming. Kelly had likely stumbled into him after Juliana left and helped him the rest of the night. The idea stung, though she didn't know why. It wasn't jealousy, she had no reason to feel that. It was something else, something she didn't want to name. She kept her distance throughout the day, slipping out of rooms when Austin entered, pretending to be busy when his gaze lingered too long on her. Once she turned a corner and nearly collided with him. He stepped forward slightly, as if to speak, but Kelly appeared instantly at his side, gripping his wrist, smiling like she owned him. Juliana murmured an apology and hurried away, heart-pounding. But ignoring him didn't erase the other truth tearing at her from the inside. The nausea had started 2 days after the hotel incident and refused to go away. At first, she blamed stress, lack of sleep, cheap coffee. But the dread curling in her stomach wouldn't quiet. After work one evening, she stopped by a drugstore, bought 2 pregnancy tests, and took them in the office restroom because she couldn't bear to wait until morning. Both turned positive in seconds. Her hands shook so violently that one test slipped from her grip and clattered onto the tile. She pressed her palms to her mouth to muffle her breath. She wasn't ready. She wasn't in love. She didn't want a baby with a man who barely remembered her name, a man she barely remembered herself. Bennett had been a mistake, a moment of vulnerability, not a future. She slid down against the cold metal of the stall door, feeling the weight of everything tightening around her. How would she raise a child when she struggled to take care of herself? How could she tell her father, who already worried about every dollar spent? And how could she face Kelly, who would no doubt gloat, judge, or mock her? She didn't have to wait long to find out. Kelly found the discarded test box in Juliana's bag the next morning. She had a habit of rifling through Juliana's things as though boundaries were optional luxuries. The moment she saw it, her entire body stiffened. Her mind jumped to the only conclusion that terrified her. What if the baby is Austin's? Even though Kelly had never touched Austin, not the way that mattered, she had built a fantasy around him. A fantasy where she became Mrs. Landon, where wealth, status, and praise fell into her hands, the way they had always fallen to Juliana since they were kids. Kelly couldn't risk losing that fantasy. Not to Juliana, especially not to her. She cornered Juliana in the copy room, shutting the door with a force that rattled the frame. "You're pregnant," Kelly demanded, voice trembling with a mix of panic and fury. Juliana froze mid-step. "Kelly, I wasn't ready to talk about it." "With who? Who's the father?" Kelly stepped closer, eyes blazing. "Is it Austin?" Juliana recoiled. "What? No. Kelly, nothing happened between me and—" "Don't lie to me," Kelly hissed, grabbing her wrist. "You think I can't see the way he looks at you? You think I'm stupid? This can't be happening. You can't do this to me." Juliana yanked her hand away, bewildered. "Do this to you, Kelly? What are you talking about?" "This is my life, not yours." Kelly's breath came fast, uneven. Fear, ugly and sharp-edged, carved through her expression. "You can't keep it," she whispered hoarsely. "Juliana, you don't understand. If Austin thinks the baby is yours, if he thinks you share something, he'll choose you over me. And I've worked too hard to get this close." Juliana blinked, stunned. "Kelly, you're not together. He's your boss, and I'm the woman who saved his life," she snapped. Juliana stared at her, the pieces suddenly clicking into place. Kelly had lied to him, lied to everyone, claimed a night that didn't belong to her. And now she was terrified that the truth, a truth Juliana hadn't even wanted, might destroy the fantasy she'd built. Kelly softened her tone, reaching for Juliana's hand with a trembling plea. "Look, I'm saying this because I care about you. A baby will ruin your career. You're barely making rent. You can't afford childcare. You'll lose everything." Then her voice dropped, manipulative and sugar-coated. "Let me take you to a clinic. I'll go with you. You don't have to go through this alone. It's the smart thing, the only thing." Juliana's throat tightened. For a moment, doubt crept in, wrapping around her like cold vines. Kelly's words pressed against all her fears. Poverty, exhaustion, the future she wasn't prepared for. She could feel the ground tilting beneath her, the weight of the decision threatening to crush her. But then she remembered the man in the elevator, the fragile, reckless humanity of helping someone without expecting anything. She remembered the way she had held his head, whispering that he was safe. She remembered the warmth that had filled her chest, the instinct to protect. And she felt something stir within her in response. Her hand instinctively brushed her stomach. This was her choice, her future, her child. "No," Juliana whispered, voice trembling but resolute. "I'm keeping the baby." Kelly stared at her as though she'd been slapped. "You're throwing your life away." "It's my life," Juliana said quietly, "not yours." Kelly's expression hardened, twisting into something cold and brittle. "Fine. But don't expect me to fix this for you. And don't expect Austin to clean up your mistakes. You're on your own." Juliana met her gaze without flinching. I already know that. But she didn't know the worst part. The part she would discover soon enough. Austin Landon wasn't done with her. He couldn't forget. Her face couldn't shake the echo of her voice in his memory. Couldn't stop wondering why his heart reacted before his mind understood. And Kelly, sensing that dangerous pull, would stop at nothing to keep him from remembering the truth. For Juliana, the misunderstandings had only begun. And for Austin, the truth he sought was standing right in front of him, just beyond the lies built to keep them apart. Kelly had always lived in Juliana's shadow, though she would have rather died than admit it. Even as kids, when the Bell family took her in, fed her, clothed her, treated her like a second daughter, Kelly felt the generosity as an insult rather than love. Every warm gesture toward Juliana was a wound to her, a reminder that somehow, despite being the real daughter, she never shone the way Juliana did. Juliana had laughter that lit up rooms, a gentleness that made people trust her, a kind of raw, unshakable resilience that seemed to grow stronger every time life tried to break her. Kelly hated that. Hated how naturally the world loved Juliana. Hated how easily she blended into people's hearts. It didn't matter that they shared childhood secrets or that they slept on the same creaky bed for years. Every compliment Juliana received felt like a subtraction from Kelly's worth. And as they aged, the imbalance only deepened. Boys leaned toward Juliana. Teachers praised her, neighbors adored her. Kelly watched it all with a tight smile and a tightening chest, telling herself that one day she would rise higher, shine brighter, finally take someone that Juliana could never have. When Austin Landon, billionaire, walked into their company, Kelly felt the universe had finally chosen to repay her. Here was a man whose name alone could change a life, a man whose wealth could erase every insecurity, every jealousy-ridden childhood memory. And perhaps more intoxicating than all of that, he had mistaken her for the woman who saved him. A powerful man who believed he owed his life to her. It was the kind of opportunity Kelly believed she deserved. So, she built on the lie. Layer by careful layer. In the days following the acquisition, Kelly barely left Austin's side. She knew how to hover without seeming obvious, how to laugh softly at the right moments, how to tilt her head in a way that suggested intimacy. Small calculated movements meant to convince every onlooker that she and Austin had a connection deeper than mere circumstance. She crafted stories too, how she'd stayed up all night, nursing him back to health, how he'd thanked her softly, how he'd held her hand in a haze of pain. They were half-truths spun into silkier versions woven tightly enough that even she began to savor them, as if they might one day become reality. Austin, however, was not an easy man to manipulate. He carried a quiet skepticism in the way his eyes narrowed in the pauses he took before responding to her. Something about Kelly didn't align with his memory. His recollection of the night was fractured and blurred, but the silhouette he remembered, the tenderness, the voice whispering he was safe, didn't match Kelly's sharpness. Her energy was all edges, all ambition. The woman from his memory had been warm, soft, steady. Juliana. He didn't know that yet, not consciously. But every time he encountered Juliana in the office, something inside him stirred with recognition so deep it unsettled him. The way she tensed when he approached, the guarded politeness in her eyes, the way she tried so desperately not to be seen. There was something about her silence that tugged at him more than Kelly's constant noise ever could. Kelly noticed. Of course, she noticed. She saw the way Austin's attention drifted, not openly, but subtly, like a compass needle trying desperately to point north. It terrified her. It enraged her. And it confirmed the fear she had felt in the copy room Juliana was dangerous to everything she wanted. So Kelly did what she always did when she felt cornered. She escalated. One evening, she showed up at Austin's penthouse under the pretense of needing protection. Eyes wide, voice trembling with manufactured vulnerability, she told him she'd been followed by a suspicious man on her way home. It wasn't entirely a lie. She'd staged the scene instructing an acquaintance to trail her at a distance so she could play the frightened damsel convincingly. Austin, out of principle and human decency, arranged for security to escort her. But Kelly pushed further. She insisted she didn't feel safe alone. She hinted at nightmares, at lingering trauma from the night she saved his life. She didn't cry. Kelly didn't cry unless it was useful, but she let her voice crack once strategically when she said, I don't want to die because I helped you. Austin hesitated, not because he believed her, but because he had no proof she was lying. And despite the instinctive distrust curling in his gut, he wasn't cruel. So he offered her a guest room in his estate for a few nights, strictly temporary, strictly precautionary. Kelly, of course, treated it like a triumph. She carried her bags inside like she was entering territory that was always meant to be hers. She breathed in the scent of polished wood and the city lights stretching beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, and thought, finally, this is the life I was supposed to have. Every step through the mansion fed her delusions, nourished the fantasy, where she stood beside Austin at charity galas, where her name appeared in magazines, where their children inherited an empire. She even sprinkled personal items strategically around the house, hair ties on the bathroom counter, a perfume bottle beside the sink, a silk robe draped across a chair, as if the house itself could be trained to remember her presence. But the fantasy cracked whenever Juliana entered Austin's orbit. Juliana didn't try to catch Austin's eye. She barely looked at him. She stayed busy, quiet, careful. But something about her restraint only made Austin more drawn to her. He would watch her organize documents with steady hands, watch her worry her bottom lip when she concentrated. He sensed something fragile around her, a tension in her shoulders, a secret weighing on her that she carried alone. Austin found himself wanting to ease that weight, wanting to make her smile, wanting to know why her gaze always flickered away from his, as though looking at him might burn her. Kelly saw all of it, and jealousy consumed her like wildfire. She confronted Juliana late one night in the office long after everyone had gone home. She stood over her desk, blocking the lamp's warm light, her shadow stretching across Juliana's work like a dark omen. You need to stay away from Austin, Kelly said sharply, voice simmering with territorial rage. I see the way you look at him. Juliana looked up weary. Kelly, I don't look at him. I avoid him. Exactly, Kelly spat. You're doing that thing you always do, acting like you're innocent, so people fall for you without realizing it. Juliana blinked, taken aback. I'm pregnant, Kelly. I'm trying to survive, not flirt. That's even worse, Kelly hissed under her breath. A baby is leverage, whether you meant it or not. Juliana recoiled as though struck. I'm not using my pregnancy for anything. Kelly's voice dropped to a tremor of fear and fury mashed together. It doesn't matter what you want. Austin can't think you and your baby are his responsibility. I won't let him. Juliana stared at her, suddenly understanding the depth of Kelly's desperation. This wasn't jealousy anymore. It was obsession. Violent, delusional obsession. Kelly didn't just want Austin's affection. She wanted the identity that came with him. The status, the power, the victory over Juliana. You can't control everything, Juliana whispered. Yes, I can. Kelly shot back. And I will. I won't let you ruin this for me. What Kelly didn't know, what she could never anticipate, was that Austin had overheard part of their exchange. He had paused outside the office door, unseen, listening. He didn't catch every word, but he caught enough to confirm his lingering suspicion that something was wrong with Kelly's version of events. that she wasn't the fragile savior she pretended to be. That maybe, just maybe, the woman he truly owed his life to was someone who never once asked for credit. Someone who looked at him with fear, not greed. Someone who walked through the world with quiet strength and never expected anyone to notice. Juliana. And that realization, soft, disorienting, unstoppable, was the beginning of everything Kelly feared. Because for the first time, Austin Landon didn't just see Juliana. He wondered who she was to him, who she could be, and why his heart reacted before his mind could understand. Kelly had managed to step inside his house, but Juliana had unknowingly stepped inside his memory, his instincts, and his growing need for truth. And that was far more dangerous. Austin didn't make the decision lightly. In fact, he questioned it more times than he cared to admit. Hiring Juliana as his personal assistant was a risk, especially with the rumors swirling through the office, like toxic smoke whispers, that she had caught the boss's eye, that he was favoring her, that she'd somehow manipulated her way upward. It was unfair, and he hated how the gossip clung to her like dust she couldn't shake off. He wasn't blind. He heard things when people thought he wasn't listening, and each time someone spoke her name in malice, a quiet anger stirred inside him, protective, firm, unfamiliar. But the decision had crystallized the night he overheard Kelly hissing accusations at Juliana, her voice dripping jealousy and fear. He heard Juliana's trembling breath, the strain in her voice, as she insisted she didn't want anything from him. That alone had told him everything. She wasn't after his money or influence. She wasn't trying to latch on to him. She was trying to survive. And he wanted to help her. Needed to even. So he called her into his office the next morning. She stood stiffly near his desk, hands clasped tightly, eyes guarded. She clearly feared being reprimanded or fired. She'd probably endured enough in life to expect the worst whenever a door shut behind her. "I want you to work directly with me," he said simply. Her eyes widened, panic flickering across them. "Mr. Landon, I don't think that's a good idea." "I do," he replied, voice even gentle. "You're capable. Organized. I've seen how you work." "This will cause more rumors," she whispered. "Let them talk," he said, surprising himself. "I don't make decisions based on gossip." She didn't thank him, not in words, but something in her shoulders softened, and for a moment, he saw the girl who had held him in a dark hotel room, whispering that he was safe. She didn't know he remembered that voice. He barely knew it himself. But the memory lived in him like a ghost, soft, warm, and persistent. From that day on, they were around each other constantly. And closeness has a way of revealing truths people try to hide. The first shift happened subtly the day she fainted in the hallway from exhaustion and nausea. She had brushed it off immediately, insisting she was fine. But Austin didn't miss the way her hand drifted protectively over her abdomen. He took her to the hospital himself, refusing to leave her side even when she protested softly. Juliana lay on the examination bed, staring up at the ceiling, as the doctor asked her questions. She answered hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable, admitting anything personal in front of Austin. But he waited, silent, respectful, never pushing. When the doctor confirmed the pregnancy, he watched Juliana's face carefully. She looked both relieved and terrified, as though she didn't know whether she had just gained something precious or something that would destroy her life. Austin felt something tighten in his chest, a mix of dread and an emotion he didn't dare name. The timing, the night, the vague memory of a warm hand on his cheek, the faint scent of vanilla and clean linen. The puzzle pieces clicked sharply, painfully into place. He didn't say anything then, but he knew, or at least his heart did, even if his mind begged for caution. After that day, he adjusted her workload without asking. He gave her tasks she could do seated. He ordered her ergonomic chairs, placed water bottles within easy reach, made sure she ate even when she forgot. He brought her ginger tea when nausea hit, and kept painkillers in his drawer just in case. At lunch, he ordered food she liked, and pretended it was coincidence when he picked exactly what her cravings demanded. Juliana resisted the attention at first, insisting she was fine, insisting she didn't need special treatment. But she didn't pull away from him. Not physically, not emotionally, not truly. She would steal glances when she thought he wasn't looking, her expression softening in ways she didn't allow anyone else to see. She relaxed when he entered a room, even if she tried to hide it. She smiled more quietly, shyly, in a way that made him feel like he was witnessing something private. It was the small moments that undid him, her hand brushing his when he handed her papers, the way she bit her lip when she concentrated, how her voice softened whenever she said his name, Mr. Landon, as though she couldn't help herself, and the way she radiated warmth without trying, like sunlight that softened everything it touched. He had dated glamorous women before, models and socialites whose worlds mirrored his own, but none of them made him feel calm, grounded, real. Juliana did. And he hadn't realized how desperately he needed that until she stepped into his orbit. But just as he grew closer, Juliana pulled back. It was subtle at first, a step away when he leaned in, an excuse to leave the room, a sudden reluctance to hold eye contact. He felt her slipping behind invisible walls he didn't understand. And one evening, when he stayed late and found her alone at her desk, staring blankly at her computer, as though lost in a world that hurt too much, he realized something was terribly wrong. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. "Juliana." She jolted, wiping quickly at the corner of her eyes. "Sorry, I didn't hear you come in. Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." She hesitated, then shut her laptop with trembling hands. Her voice was small when she spoke. "I don't want to cause problems for anyone, especially not you." "You're not," he said, stepping closer. "You never have." But she shook her head as though she didn't believe him. "You're engaged." Austin blinked. "I'm what Kelly said." She cut herself off, lips pressing together as if she'd already said too much. That single name explained everything. A heavy silence stretched. Austin exhaled slowly, anger rising not at Juliana, but at the lie, at the manipulation, at how much her fear revealed about the burden she carried alone. He lowered his voice. "Juliana, I'm not engaged to Kelly. I'm not engaged to anyone." Her breath hitched, a faint sound of disbelief escaping her. She opened her mouth to reply, but the words died on her tongue. Austin watched her conflict play across her face. Fear, longing, hope she didn't dare trust. He wanted to reach out and touch her cheek, to tilt her face up, so she would look at him the way she had that night in the elevator, trusting him with her life. But touching her felt too intimate, too dangerous, too fragile. So he kept his hands at his sides and forced himself to speak calmly. "You're not ruining anything," he said softly. "You're not the problem here." "Then why does it feel like I am?" she whispered. He didn't have an answer that would heal the years of anxiety carved into her bones, but he knew he wanted to try. The moment hung between them, heavy with unspoken truth. She finally stood, brushing her hair behind her ear, searching for composure that kept slipping away. "I should go home. It's late." Austin hesitated, then nodded. "Let me drive you." "No," she said too quickly. "I'm okay." He didn't push. "Text me when you get home safe." The request slipped out before he could stop it. Personal, possessive, vulnerable in a way CEOs weren't supposed to be. She didn't refuse. She just stared at him for a heartbeat long enough for the world to blur around them, then nodded once, and walked away. Austin watched her leave, a sinking ache pressing against his ribs. He had been drawn to her from the moment he first truly looked at her. But now he understood the truth he could no longer deny. He wasn't just drawn to her. He was falling. And somewhere in her silence, her hesitations, her trembling hands, he felt she might be falling too, even if she didn't know it yet. Juliana felt the shift before she understood it. A strange car idling too long near her bus stop. Footsteps behind her on the dim sidewalk that didn't match her pace. A prickle of dread beneath her skin whenever her hand drifted to her stomach. She told herself it was anxiety hormones, exhaustion, but deep down, something warned her she was being watched. It wasn't until the night she stayed late to finish Austin's reports that the fear crystallized into reality. She stepped out of the building, tugging her coat tight, when a van screeched to a halt inches from her. A mask, a gloved hand, the smell of gasoline, the sharp sting of panic. Everything collided too quickly for her to scream. She fought, clawed, kicked, but her captor was stronger and merciless. The world blurred, then disappeared behind the slamming doors of the van. Her thoughts splintered into terror, not for herself, but for the tiny life inside her, the one she had only just begun to imagine. She whispered apologies to her unborn baby as the van rumbled through dark streets. When they dragged her out into a cold warehouse, lit only by bare bulbs, she could barely stand. "You're going to do exactly what you're told," the kidnapper growled, tying her to a support pillar. "Or the baby doesn't make it." Juliana trembled violently, fighting back tears. Behind the man's voice, something felt familiar, an accent she'd heard before, maybe at a party, maybe somewhere near Kelly. She couldn't place it, but her heart pounded with a terrifying suspicion. Meanwhile, Austin was finishing a late meeting when a call from his security chief froze him. Sir Ms. Bell's tracking badge hasn't moved in 40 minutes, and she never boarded the bus. Something inside him snapped. "Find her," he ordered, bolting out of the room. Now. He drove like a man-possessed, rage simmering beneath his ribs. Juliana had tried to handle everything alone, her pregnancy, her fear, the lies Kelly fed her, and he had failed to protect her. He couldn't lose her. Not now. Not ever. By the time he reached the last known location, he found Bennett pacing in a panic, yelling into his phone. "Where is she?" Austin roared, grabbing him by the collar. Bennett stuttered, eyes wild. I got a call from someone using her phone. They said she's with them. They want money." "How much?" "5 million. The number meant nothing to Austin, except as proof of danger. His mind raced, summoning every resource, every connection. Before he could issue another order, his phone buzzed. A distorted voice crackled through the speaker. "Mr. Landon, you want your woman back. Bring the money. And be quick, my woman," Austin repeated under his breath. The possessiveness didn't frighten him. It was the truth he hadn't dared to speak aloud. He traced the pings from the call, coordinated the extraction team, and followed the van's last route. Time stretched every minute, suffocating. Inside the warehouse, Juliana's breath hitched when the metal door creaked open again. 2 figures stumbled in, Bennett and Kelly. Juliana's heart lurched in confusion and dread. Kelly stormed forward, panic etched across her face, eyes bright with something twisted between fear and guilt. "Oh my God. Jules, are you okay?" Juliana stared at her, everything inside her going cold. "You knew." Kelly flinched as though slapped. "No, I came to help, I swear." But her gaze flicked nervously toward the kidnappers, betraying more than she meant to. One of them shoved a gun toward Bennett and Kelly. "We said one person leaves. Choose." Juliana couldn't breathe. "What?" The kidnapper smirked. Only one of the women walks free. The other stays. As insurance. Bennett's face twisted in terror as he looked between Juliana, the woman he had once claimed to love, and Kelly clinging to his arm. He didn't hesitate long. His voice cracked as he pointed. Kelly. Save Kelly. Juliana's stomach turned violently. She tasted betrayal bile and the bitter truth all at once. Kelly gasped, throwing a hand to her chest in performative shock, but she wasn't surprised. Not really. She whispered harshly, Bennett, don't. But the damage was done. Juliana whispered, heartbreaking. So it was true. The night after my birthday. The way you disappeared. It was because of her. Before Kelly could respond, Bennett exploded with a confession desperate to justify himself. Kelly's pregnant. It's mine. I have to protect her. Silence crashed over the room. Kelly's face drained of color as she realized what he'd just given away. Her gravest secret blurted out in fear. Juliana felt her knees weaken. She had suspected lies manipulation, but not this. Kelly, her childhood friend, her sister in everything but blood, had been sleeping with her ex while destroying her from behind. Before Juliana could process the heartbreak, the warehouse door burst open. Armed guards swept in. Austin followed, fury burning in his eyes. The kidnappers scrambled, but Austin moved like a storm. He crossed the warehouse floor in seconds, reaching Juliana and tearing the rope from her wrists with shaking hands. Are you hurt? He breathed, voice raw. Juliana collapsed into him before she could stop herself, exhaustion breaking her defenses. His arms locked around her automatically, protectively, as though he'd been waiting to hold her. Kelly, in a desperate bid for attention, threw herself toward one of the guards and slipped. She struck the concrete floor with a thud, crying out in pain. Help me, Austin! Please, my baby! Austin's stiffened jaw tightening, but he still signaled the medics. He wasn't cruel. Take her to the hospital, he ordered. But he didn't touch her. Didn't look at her longer than necessary. His focus remained fixed on Juliana, whose breath trembled against his chest. At the hospital, chaos blurred into antiseptic white. Kelly was wheeled into emergency care. Bennett tried to follow, but Austin blocked him with a cold, merciless stare. Stay where you are. DNA tests were ordered. Austin's command, not request. He needed answers before the lies tangled further. Hours passed. Juliana lay in a hospital bed, fighting sleep, one hand instinctively guarding her stomach. Austin sat beside her, elbows on his knees, head bowed. He didn't touch her, but the space between them pulsed with unspoken truth. When the doctor returned, he held 2 envelopes. His expression was unreadable. Mr. Landon, here are the paternity results. Austin rose slowly, the room holding its breath. Kelly's baby, the doctor said, belongs to Mr. Bennett. A single sentence that shattered Kelly's facade completely. Bennett sank into a chair, covering his face with shaking hands. Austin barely reacted. He had expected this. And Ms. Bell's child. The doctor continued, pausing. The father is you, Mr. Landon. The world stilled. Juliana's breath hitched in her throat. Her hand flew to her stomach, eyes widening with disbelief, and something deeper, a fear laced with fragile hope. Austin closed his eyes for a long moment, absorbing the truth, letting it settle into him like a sunrise he had been waiting for without knowing. When he opened them, he stepped toward her bed, not with shock, not with hesitation, but with clarity. He reached for her hand, gently, tentatively, as if asking permission. She didn't pull away. His voice dropped to a whisper meant only for her. I won't let anything happen to you, or our child. Something inside Juliana broke open, fear, confusion, longing, all swirling into a single overwhelming truth. The man she had saved in the dark. The man she had avoided feared wanting. The man she had unknowingly given part of herself to. He was the father of her child. And from the way he held her hand steady, certain she realized he wasn't going anywhere. Austin didn't delay. By morning, after a sleepless night spent pacing the hospital corridors and replaying every unanswered question, he arranged a private meeting in one of the mansion's glass-walled lounges. It overlooked the city, cold, fractured light spilling across polished floors, and the atmosphere carried the weight of something inevitable. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was a reckoning. He called everyone involved, every person who had woven themselves into Juliana's trauma. Kelly, her parents, Juliana's father, Bennett. And Juliana, though exhausted and shaken, insisted on being present, her fingers absently brushing the curve of her stomach, as though grounding herself in the one truth that mattered now. When they were all seated, the silence was almost unbearable. Kelly sat rigidly in her chair, a thin hospital blanket draped around her shoulders, eyes darting nervously between Austin and Juliana. Her hair was disheveled makeup smeared, but her gaze still carried that sharp, calculating glint, as if she were waiting for the right moment to twist the story back into her favor. Austin remained standing, jaw tight, hands folded behind him, a man composed on the outside yet burning within. His voice was calm when he finally spoke, but every syllable was carved with precision. We're here because the truth has been buried under too many lies, and those lies have harmed the people who least deserved it. Kelly's lips twitched into something like a pout. Austin, I already explained. You explained nothing, he cut in, not raising his voice, but making her flinch all the same. You lied. You manipulated. You endangered lives. And now you will listen. Kelly opened her mouth, but her mother laid a trembling hand on her arm, silently urging her to be still. Austin turned to the group. Last night's kidnapping was not random. It was planned, coordinated. Someone wanted Juliana terrified enough to make irreversible decisions. Someone wanted leverage. His gaze hardened on Kelly. And that someone is sitting in this room. Kelly's father's eyes widened. Kelly! What is he talking about? Kelly hunched inward, fists clenched, breath shallow. That's not fair. Austin ignored her interruption. She hired those men, paid them to abduct Juliana, to threaten her, to force her into a situation she'd regret forever. A gasp rippled through the room. Juliana closed her eyes briefly, pain flickering across her face. Her father reached for her hand, grip steady, despite the tremor in his fingers. Kelly's voice rose shrill and defensive. I didn't want to hurt her. I needed her out of the way. For a little while. Just until the wedding. There was no wedding, Austin said sharply. Because there was no engagement. There was no relationship. Everything you told her about me was a lie. Kelly shook her head violently. You don't understand. She always gets everything. Ever since we were kids, she stole the attention, the affection, the opportunities. I was supposed to have something for once. Someone. You. Juliana stared at her, heart breaking in slow, aching pulses. Kelly, I never stole anything from you. Oh, please. Kelly snapped, tears darting into her eyes, but not softening her bitterness. You always played the innocent one, the quiet one. Everyone loved you because you acted fragile, delicate, the little stray who needed saving. My parents practically worshipped you. They gave you everything and left me with scraps. Her mother gasped, softly stricken. Kelly, that's not true. It is true, Kelly screamed. Do you think I didn't notice how they looked at her? How they always talked about how sweet she was, how grateful, how she was the daughter they never had. And you, she pointed shakily at Juliana. You let them. Juliana's voice was gentle, trembling. I never asked for any of that. I never wanted to replace you. Kelly's laugh was hollow cracked. You didn't have to ask. You just existed. That was enough. Austin stepped forward, then expression ironed into something cold. So you repaid their kindness by trying to steal someone else's life, by pretending to be the woman who saved me, by planning to pass off another man's child as mine. Kelly froze, face draining of color. Her gaze flicked toward Bennett, who stiffened under the sudden attention. He swallowed hard, guilt all over him. Austin continued relentless. The DNA results confirmed it. Your baby is Bennett's, not mine. Every word you told me about that night, all of it was a fabrication. Kelly's shoulders curled inward, but not in remorse. In fear. Fear of losing the fantasy she'd built, the future she'd already crowned herself queen of. Her father cleared his throat shakily. Kelly, why would you lie about saving him? Why pretend it was you? Before Kelly could answer, Juliana's father spoke, voice heavy with a history no one else fully understood. Because she's been living a lie for years. He turned to Kelly's parents, eyes clouded with old memory. It's time they know the truth too. Kelly stiffened. Dad, no. Don't. But he ignored her. The reason you took Kelly in wasn't charity, he said softly, looking at Kelly's mother. It was gratitude. You owed my family your livelihood, because Juliana's mother, God rest her soul, saved your business from collapse 20 years ago. She poured her savings into your operations when no bank would trust you. She believed in you when no one else did. His voice cracked. And when she died, you honored her legacy by taking in her daughter. Not because you loved her more than Kelly, but because you wanted to do what was right. Kelly's mother burst into tears. Sweetheart, we loved you both. We tried to give you equally. We thought you knew. Kelly stared at her parents as if the world had pulled a cruel trick on her. So all these years, all those times you told her she was special, you meant because she saved you, not because she was better. Her father's face twisted with grief. Kelly, she wasn't better. She was needing. And you were our daughter. We didn't want you to feel burdened by a truth you were too young to understand. But Juliana was never your rival. She was family. Kelly's breath fractured into shallow, panicked gasps. No, that's not true. She is my rival. She always has been. If she wasn't, why does he love her? The room froze. Austin's gaze flickered to Juliana. Her cheeks flushed, eyes wide, heart pounding so loudly she felt it in her throat. Kelly stumbled to her feet, practically wild. You think I didn't notice? You think I didn't feel it every time he looked at you? The way he protected you, the way he risked everything last night. I knew. I knew the moment he carried you out of that warehouse, like your life mattered more than anything. Austin exhaled slowly, unable to deny the truth. Juliana does matter to me. Kelly's gaze snapped to Juliana like a blade. Why? What is it about you? Why do they all choose you? Bennett chose you first, and even when he cheated, he came crawling back. My parents chose you. Now Austin too. What do you have that I don't? Juliana's voice trembled. Kelly, I never wanted anyone to choose me over you. Liar, Kelly sobbed. You ruined everything. You took everything from me. Austin stepped between them, expression darkening. Enough. You hurt Juliana. You endangered her child. You lied to me, manipulated everyone, and nearly caused an irreversible tragedy. Kelly crumpled to the floor, shaking violently, tears spilling unchecked. I didn't mean for it to go so far. I just wanted to be someone. I wanted to be wanted. I wanted a life that felt like it belonged to me. Juliana's heart cracked despite everything, despite the lies, despite the pain. She bent down slowly, resting a hand on her stomach as she knelt near Kelly. I forgive you, she whispered. But I can't be your sister anymore. Not after this. Kelly's face twisted in grief that looked almost childlike. Please, don't leave me. Jules, please. Juliana swallowed hard, feeling tears rise. You left me long before I left you. Kelly's sobs echoed long after Juliana stood and walked back to Austin, who placed a steady hand on her back to support her. Kelly's parents carried their daughter out, broken, collapsing into a grief they didn't know how to mend. Bennett followed behind them, shame clinging to him like a second skin. In the quiet that remained, Juliana's father reached for her hand gently. Are you all right? She nodded, leaning instinctively into Austin's side. I will be. Austin looked at her, then not with pity, not with anger, but with something deeper. Something that promised protection, tenderness, and an unspoken confession. Kelly's lies had crumbled. The past had been unearthed, and the truth, fragile, blazing, undeniable, now stood between them, like the first ray of sunrise. Juliana wasn't alone anymore, and Austin wasn't pretending anymore. The drive back to Austin's penthouse was wrapped in a silence that felt fragile, suspended between two hearts that had finally run out of room to hide. Juliana sat in the passenger seat, fingers curled protectively around her abdomen, while Austin gripped the wheel with a tension that betrayed the storm inside him. The city lights slid across his face, flashes of gold and shadow that made him look both powerful and painfully human. The events of the day still clung to the air like residual smoke. Kelly's lies unraveled. Bennett's betrayal revealed paternity, exposed the truth finally laid bare. Yet even with everything out in the open, a quiet uncertainty pulsed between them. They had stepped into a new reality, one that neither of them quite knew how to navigate. When they finally reached the penthouse, Austin opened her door with more gentleness than she'd ever been shown. He guided her inside his hand, hovering near her back, as if afraid she might disappear if he didn't keep her in his orbit. The moment the door shut behind them, the world seemed to shrink into a fragile, perfect stillness. No security team, no accusations, no lies. Just the two of them, under the soft glow of the living room lights. Juliana sank onto the couch, her exhaustion palpable, but her eyes kept drifting to Austin, as if searching for the right version of him, the man she saved, the man she feared, the man she might be falling for. He stood before her for a long moment, hands in his pockets, chest rising and falling with steady breaths, as though he was preparing to cross an invisible bridge. Juliana, he said quietly, there's something I need to say before anything else. Her heart kicked against her ribs. Austin, you don't owe me anything. That's not true, he said with sudden intensity, closing the distance between them. I owe you everything. My life, my truth, and now my future. She looked away, her throat tightening. Kelly told me things, that you were going to marry her, that the two of you, none of it was real, he said, voice low but firm. I never asked her to move in, never promised her anything, never felt anything for her. I let her stay, because she claimed she was in danger, but even then, something felt wrong. I just didn't know how deep her lies went. Juliana swallowed disbelief and relief crashing together in her chest. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He exhaled. Because I didn't realize how much it mattered. Not until I saw how it hurt you. His gaze softened, his features shifting into something vulnerable. Not until I realized how much you mattered to me. Her breath stilled. Austin took another step closer, lowering himself onto the couch beside her, though still leaving just enough space not to overwhelm her. Do you remember the night at the Indigo Hotel? He asked softly. Juliana's pulse fluttered. Of course I do. I only remembered pieces for a long time, he confessed. your hands on my face, your voice telling me I was safe. I tried to convince myself it was a dream. But then I saw you at the office, and every instinct in me knew you were the one. I just didn't know how to reach you." Juliana blinked rapidly, emotions fraying at the edges. "Austin, I fell for you before I even knew your name," he whispered. "Every day you worked beside me, I fought myself not to stare, not to worry, not to feel this impossible pull toward you." Her chest tightened painfully, overwhelmed by the sincerity pouring from him. She opened her mouth to speak, but he continued, his voice thickening with emotion. "And when I found out the baby is mine." His words trailed off, as if the weight of them had stunned even him. Juliana looked down at her belly instinctively. "Austin, I didn't tell you, because I thought you had someone else. I thought I would ruin your life. You're not ruining anything," he murmured, lifting her chin gently. "You're giving me something I never thought I'd have." Her voice was a whisper. "A child. A family," he corrected softly. Juliana's breath trembled. "Are you sure you want this? Really sure? Even after everything? Even with how complicated it all is?" His answer came without hesitation. Austin took her hand, threading their fingers together with a quiet certainty that made her heart stumble. "That is our child. I have never been more sure of anything in my life." Her eyes blurred instantly, tears rising so fast she couldn't stop them. He brushed one away with his thumb, his touch feather light. "Juliana, look at me." She did, though her vision wavered. "I love you," Austin said, his voice breaking open, stripped of all the armor he usually wore. "I've loved you from the moment you saved me. I've loved you every second since, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it to you." Before she could respond, he moved off the couch and lowered himself onto one knee. A gesture so unexpected, so achingly sincere, that Juliana covered her mouth with both hands. "Austin? What are you doing?" "What I should have done the moment I realized you were the woman who changed my life." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box, not with a flourish, but with a reverence that made her heart ache. "Juliana Bell," he said, voice steady, even as emotion thickened it. "You are brave, kind, strong, and everything I never knew I needed. You saved me before I ever had the chance to save you. You carry my child. You carry my heart. And I want to spend the rest of my life protecting both." He opened the box. A diamond ring caught the light, but Juliana barely saw it. She was too focused on the man kneeling before her with love shining openly in his eyes. "Will you marry me?" Her breath caught in her throat. Her entire life, every hardship, every wound, every lonely moment seemed to converge into this one impossible, breathtaking point. Austin looked at her, as though she was the most precious thing he had ever held, and for the first time, Juliana let herself believe she deserved to be loved like that. Tears spilled down her cheeks freely. She pressed a trembling hand to his face, her touch soft but sure, and nodded with a choked whisper. "Yes." Austin exhaled like he had been holding his breath for years. He slipped the ring onto her finger as she cried, and when he rose, she reached for him instinctively. He pulled her into his arms, holding her with a tenderness that melted every last piece of fear inside her. Their lips met, slow, gentle, sacred, as if sealing a promise made long before either of them understood it. When they finally broke apart, Juliana rested her forehead against his chest, her tears soaking his shirt, her smile trembling but radiant. "I love you," she whispered the words, spilling out in a way that felt both terrifying and inevitable. "I love you so much." Austin wrapped his arms around her, pressing a kiss to her hair. "You and our baby. You're my whole world now." And in that quiet golden moment, with the city glittering far below, and their hands intertwined over the life growing inside her, Juliana realized she had found something she thought she'd never have: home belonging, and a future shimmering with hope. The pain, the betrayal, the lies, all of it had led her here. To him, to them, and she wouldn't trade a single moment of it. 1 year later, the world looked different, softer somehow, as if life itself had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. The morning sun poured gently through the windows of the Landon penthouse, casting a warm golden hue over the nursery, where Juliana rocked her infant son in her arms. His tiny fingers curled around hers, warm and impossibly small. A fragile miracle, who carried two worlds within his skin. Her deep, rich complexion, softened by the warmth of Austin's. His eyes a bright, stormy blue that always made her heart twist. He was the living proof of a night born in chaos, but destined for love. She hummed to him, her voice low and tender, the melody more instinct than memory. He blinked sleepily, his lashes long and soft, his breathing calm against her chest. Holding him felt like holding the universe, every star, every hope, every second chance gathered into one small heartbeat. Behind her, Austin leaned against the doorway, watching them with an expression she had come to recognize as his quiet awe. Fatherhood had changed him in ways neither of them had expected. The sharp, ambitious CEO the world admired had softened into a man who memorized feeding schedules, who sang lullabies in a low, rumbling voice, who woke up at 3 a.m. without complaint, just to let Juliana rest. His love had grown into something gentle, steady and fierce, an anchor for her in the moments when she doubted her own strength. He crossed the room slowly, always hesitant to disturb the quiet magic between mother and child. As he reached them, he brushed a kiss against her temple, and then the baby's forehead, his touch reverent. "He looks like you when he sleeps," he murmured, his voice low and warm against her ear. She smiled softly. "He has your stubbornness." "God help us," he teased lightly, though his eyes softened as he looked down at his son. "Two of you in one house." She leaned lightly into him, feeling his arm wrap around her waist, grounding her. A year ago, she had carried fear like a second skin. Fear of being alone, fear of repeating the mistakes of her past, fear of being unworthy of love. Now, she stood in the center of a life she once believed she had no right to dream about, held firmly by a man who had chosen her in every moment since the day the truth came out. Their journey hadn't been seamless. In the early months of pregnancy, Juliana struggled to let go of her guilt and self-doubt. She feared she'd disrupt Austin's life, feared she'd lose herself in the unfamiliar world of wealth and influence. But Austin never let her retreat. He had a way of taking her fears and dissolving them with steady hands and soft eyes, reminding her that she wasn't walking into his world, they were building a new one together. The baby stirred, a small sigh escaping his lips, and Austin reached out to take him gently. "Here," he whispered. "Let me." Juliana handed the baby over, watching as Austin cradled him effortlessly, his large hands dwarfing the tiny bundle. The sight never failed to bring tears to her eyes. She'd grown up watching men run away from responsibilities, from love, from vulnerability. Austin ran toward it, toward them. She touched the ring on her finger, still a perfect fit, still a symbol she sometimes traced absent-mindedly, just to reassure herself she wasn't living a dream. Their wedding had been intimate, warm, filled with quiet promises, rather than grand displays. It wasn't the spectacle Austin's world expected, nor the simple courthouse ceremony Juliana once imagined for herself. It was something in between, just them, the few people who mattered, and vows spoken with trembling sincerity. Her father had cried. Austin had cried harder. And when the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Juliana had felt her heart finally fully come home. Now, 1 year later, That home had grown. Their son cooed softly in Austin's arms, and Juliana felt a familiar warmth bloom in her chest. She brushed her fingers along Austin's shoulder, letting herself marvel at how natural this felt, how seamless and right. But not every story in their orbit had found such a gentle landing. Kelly's absence hung faintly in the corners of their lives, a shadow of what once was and what could never be again. After her breakdown, her parents admitted her to a mental health treatment center outside the city. The jealousy and resentment she carried for years had twisted into something she could no longer control. Sometimes late at night, Juliana wondered if she could have helped Kelly sooner, if she had missed signs or dismissed cries for attention disguised as cruelty. But then she remembered the kidnapping, the lies, the attempts to harm her child, and she reminded herself that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant letting go. And she had let go. She wished Kelly a softer path when she left the center. She hoped healing found her. But their lives would never intersect the same way again. As for Bennett, he had vanished from the city entirely. One day, he packed his car and left behind nothing but a few unanswered questions and a trail of regret. Rumor had it, he moved to California, chasing a quieter life away from the wreckage of his mistakes. Juliana felt nothing toward him now. Not anger, not attachment, not pain. Just distance. Closure. Their paths had crossed at the wrong time, in the wrong way, and life had corrected the course. She didn't need more than that. Austin walked to the window with their son, the city stretching beneath them in silver morning light. "He'll have your resilience," Austin murmured, rocking him gently. "Your kindness." Juliana smiled softly as she joined him, resting her head against his shoulder. "And your strength," she added, "your loyalty." He chuckled lightly. "So we're raising a superhero." "We kind of are," she whispered. She watched her son's tiny features, marveling at the miracle of him. This child who existed only because fate had pushed two broken people into the same elevator on a night that could have destroyed them both. Instead, it had saved them. She wrapped her arms around Austin's waist, leaning fully into him. He turned his head, pressing a slow kiss to her hair. "Are you happy?" he asked softly. She nodded, closing her eyes. "More than I ever thought possible." "Good," he whispered, "because I plan on spending forever making sure it stays that way." She laughed quietly, her heart swelling at the earnestness in his voice. There were still challenges ahead, parenthood, marriage, past wounds that needed time to fully fade, but none of it frightened her anymore. Not with him beside her, not with the life they'd built hand in hand. She reached for her son's foot, tracing the tiny curve of his heel. "You know," she murmured, eyes soft, "I used to think fate was cruel, that it handed me the worst parts of life and left me to survive them alone." Austin glanced down at her, his gaze warm and steady. And now, she lifted her chin and looked out at the endless horizon, the city glowing with distant possibilities. "Now I know better," she said, her voice strong, sure filled with quiet triumph. "Fate just took the long way. But it led me here, to you, to him, to everything I never knew I deserved." Austin kissed her again, a slow, grateful kiss, and when she pulled back, she whispered the words she had held in her heart for months, words that marked the end of her past and the beginning of the world she now claimed as her own. "Even if life gave me a dark beginning," she said softly, "love gave me the light I needed to find my way." And surrounded by the two souls she loved most, Juliana finally stepped fully into her future. No longer the girl struggling in the shadows, but the woman who survived, transformed, and found her destiny shining brightly in front of her. The end.